guessing because I'm on TV, most of you know who I am. The person to my right needs no introduction. Henry Kissinger used to say, those who need no introduction often crave it the most. This is not true of Ken Chenault, who is an extraordinary business leader and also a very down-to-earth, modest man. How to describe Ken? Probably the best way is Warren Buffett's description, which is that he was the single best creator and preserver of brand value in the American business community in the period that Warren has been working, which is the last 40 or 50 years. So that, I think, puts it very well. And I think it relates in some ways to the question, the conversation that we were having just now, because, you know, and I know because you've said this to me, Ken, so I'm appropriating your insight. You've talked about how American Express is not really a payments company, but a service company. So if that's the case, what do you think AI does to the experience of being a service company?
Yeah, so if I start, what I think is very important is I believe American Express is a service platform. And we deliver service through a range of form factors. And that's one of the reasons why I think American Express has been able to adapt because of the service platform. But what's really important and why I was really excited about the capabilities of Crescendo is it not just democratizes customer service for the customer, but for the company. So let me just give you a sense from a competitive standpoint. One of the things that I always realized and was gratified is that most of our competitors would not sustainably invest in customer service because they just didn't get it. And they looked at it, you know, it was a capability where they would periodically cut when they needed to meet their numbers. And so we always took the position that we would invest over the short, moderate, and long term. And we would just pour it in, and people would say, I just don't understand what they're doing. And it's all about features. And the reality is, as I look at brands, my position on brands is brands are a cluster of values, rational, so you got to have a rational value proposition. But the emotional connection, when you can connect the rational and the emotional, you've got a supercharged brand. And the best way to connect rationally and emotionally is through customer service. And so what I would be fearful if I was still CEO at American Express was of a company like Crescendo that is providing a level of personalized service and then very importantly tied to success metrics. So what's very interesting for American Express is I isolated the ultimate indicator, leading indicator of a strong customer relationship was increase in average spend. And people would show me, look, you know, we have customer improvements here. And what we started to work on were the data analytics to say, how do we drive an increase in spend? Everything has to input into that because that's the way we're going to have real strong engagement with our customers. And then we have a range of leading indicators. And with a platform like Crescendo, you're able to do that and able to, in fact, with small, medium-sized companies as well as large companies. So I think competitively, most payment companies would not look at this from a competitive standpoint. I think this is really transforming.
And so talk a little bit more about then what does brand become in a world like that? Because you're right, the barrier to entry for interacting individually with people goes down enormously. So you can even think of there's so much advertising that is designed to showcase the brand because you can't actually have a quick conversation with the 4 million people you want to convey something to about American Express. But now you actually can.
Absolutely. And so the ability to have those personalized interactions is very powerful. What it will do is it will, in fact, create even more innovation in the marketplace on customer service, just as it does on features of the card. So there's going to be an arms race on customer service. It will still take some innovative thinking, some bold ideas, but the reality is that there'll be a level of customer service that, if this is implemented, people will take for granted. So it raises the stakes. And then it's going to be the question is, how do you elevate human connection? What are the areas? How do you augment that? I think that's going to be really critical. So this is not an automatic pilot thing that you can be dumb and operate this, because you've got to get insights. You have to understand how to use those insights in a creative way. But what it does is it gives you instantaneous feedback and the ability to make adjustments. So I think what we're going to see, I hope, is a real elevation of personalized service for customers that's going to be major. And we're going to have to think of all types of creative ideas, just as happens in creating value propositions and product features.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things, Hemant and I wrote this article for the Harvard Business Review about how AI, for much of business, is not going to be about, as the internet was, disruption, the complete, completely destroy an industry. It's about transformation.
That's right.
How do you apply AI to the healthcare industry to massively transform
Absolutely.
it? Right? And if you're trying to do that, it seems to me you have a different model of what you want. You want to partner. You want to figure out how.
Absolutely.
You don't need the lone geeky engineer.
That's right.
You need a team, and you need to figure out how to do that. When you look at it, imagine you're at American Express and you want these transformations. Are you comfortable with a company that comes out of nowhere, as opposed to going to Salesforce? And
it depends on the opportunity, and I think one of the things that would give me added confidence is obviously the people involved, but also the speed of being able to see if this is something that can work. I had this saying at American Express, which I really do believe, we want to become the company that will put us out of business. And that was to have a mentality of, a challenger type of situation. And, business, which people don't realize enough, and I would always ask this question of CEOs particularly, because then I'd put them in a category, is I'd ask them, what are 3 or 4 ideas you're really excited about? And some would more talk about, here are the metrics in my business, here's a deal that I've done, but they weren't really captivated with ideas. And if you want to be an enduring business, if you want to have a differentiated business model, it's all about ideas. And so fortunately, just my DNA and experiences, I've always enjoyed working with entrepreneurs. And even at American Express, my first job was running a business, and this is like pre-internet, that sold merchandise through the direct marketing channel. And it was a really entrepreneurial business that I tried to buy from the company. Because I said, I don't want to work at a big company. And I was, 29, so seemed like a good time. And obviously I stayed. But I think what's important is, I think business is all about creating ideas. So yeah, I definitely worked with a number of companies that were starting off, and I would like to experiment. However, the challenge was the feedback loop. Sometimes it would just take too long, and they couldn't scale up.
It's one of the things that I've found most useful in thinking about these kind of moments is Clay Christensen's idea of the innovator's dilemma. And I think about it when thinking about the company that Matt and Anna have started, which is, you look at BPOs, and Matt and I were talking about this. They're called business processing outsourcing, but most of them are basically labor arbitrage
Absolutely.
companies. Like in India, you go to India, they're always talking about their tech companies.
Right.
Their tech companies are all labor arbitrage. People answering the phone for less money than it costs to answer the phone in the US. And then it scales up from that a little bit. But the fundamental dynamic
Right.
is always you can pay this guy 60 cents on the dollar or 30 cents
Right.
on the dollar to do it. And it feels like that kind of company is going to embrace AI in a very different way. You've got 30,000 people working for you. You start with that reality, and now you try to integrate AI into it, versus you start with the AI and the company and say to yourself, what is the most efficient way
That's right.
to provide that customer service
And I think,
experience?
very importantly, the most efficient way, and I don't take lightly that Crescendo is a customer experience platform. Those words are really important. A BPO mentality, they may in fact say we can be more efficient, but are they thinking broad enough about the opportunity? And so what's critical is when you have a customer experience platform, that's very different than saying I'm going to be a BPO. It's going to be more narrow. It's all going to be about efficiency and not about the overall customer experience. And so I think that's one of the important things is what is the mindset going in as you're using AI? And I do think you've got to have a mindset. You got to take a position of what you are going to be focused on.
Yeah, Matt talked about that when
Yeah.
talking about the time of the call.
That's right.
It used to be, time, how long it takes is a bad thing, but now the longer they take, the more they're building a relationship.
One of the things which was classic at American Express now 15, 20 years ago, the customer reps were rewarded for how quickly the call lasted. And then, we started doing analysis on it, and people would be really, I had this great average call, and I got it down, and isn't this terrific? And really what the big issue was that we found that the most damaging thing was when you had to switch someone, that you could see a drop in a correlation all the way down, frankly, eventually to average spend. If it happened 3 or 4 times. So, it's really getting that data in to be able to make changes to develop an even closer personalized relationship is just powerful.
Let's open it up.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, customer service has always been at the bottom in terms of power, right? They don't even have budgets. They have to go to operations. It's like, Oliver, please, sir, can I have some more? And so how do we create great storytellers to unlock that and say that, customer service it's what you are. It's not a department. It is you.
So, from a cultural standpoint, one of the things that is very important in American Express is it is in the culture, it's in the water that customers are paramount. They're at the top of the pyramid. And everyone is in service. And part of what we did from an incentive standpoint, which was critical, is of your incentive comp, 50% was shareholder, but things had to tie into there. 25% was customer, and 25% were employees. And everyone had customer metrics. And then from a investment standpoint, the area that generally had an increase was customer service, but it was an increase of improving aspects of customer service. And one of the things, I had 3 operating principles that helped guide us. One is provide superior value to the customers and clients that we serve. So we have to measure that. Second, do it in a way that allows us to achieve best-in-class economics. And best-in-class economics meant that we could reinvest in the business and also generate profitability. But I intentionally did not say best-in-class costs. because there was discretion and judgment that needed to be used in different areas, even in customer service. Particularly, I would say we need to have lowest costs in these areas, but I looked at it holistically. And then the third was, which really completed the trifecta, was everything we do must support and enhance the American Express brand. Because if we're a brand-driven organization, that's the core of who we are. Everyone needs to be, and we in fact had measurements against each of those operating principles and infused that into our performance appraisals. So it can be done, but it means that there has to be, again, a belief that that is core. And to Fareed's point, you have to align incentives against it. So, yeah, people, when we put those metrics in, people saw we really meant business. And what we said is we believe in the service profit chain. So if we have engaged, satisfied employees, that's going to allow us to achieve the customer service and to achieve the shareholder performance. But the center was really the customer.
And I think AI makes that more,
Absolutely.
it elevates that. So if you think in the tech world,
Tremendously.
there are really like two kinds of companies. One that have an amazing product, and their customer service isn't that good. And then the others are where the customer really is. So think about Google versus Amazon, right? Amazon's service is superb. If you're you want to return stuff, all that stuff. Google service, they've got a great search engine. And as search, because of AI, is now becoming more of a customer experience, right? All of a sudden, you're going to see, ChatGPT talks back to me, it gives me paragraphs. Is that, and Google is now trying to figure out how do you compete. So it's becoming more about the customer experience rather than the pure search. And I suspect that you're going to see more and more of that. I mean, I give you another example. I've owned a Tesla forever. It is an amazing product. Because of that, the customer service is lousy. I mean, there's luckily very little ever breaks on your Tesla, because if it did, you wouldn't know what to do, right? And that's, you go to Porsche, the customer service is incredible, right? So that's, the AI allows now everyone to play in that game.
Absolutely. But they have to have the commitment, and they got to follow through, and it's got to be through every fabric of the organization.
All right, maybe one more, and then
Yep.
So.
Thanks a lot. Thanks so much for your time today. It's great to see you. This is maybe a little easier question, but I have a young kid who talks to Alexa and AI, and they don't have to be polite at all. Every adult, they have to say please and thank you, but what is that going to do to people? And should a customer service AI say you're being rude?
My view, and I think Fareed would be with me also, I think civility is really important in society. I think social conventions, the right types of social conventions, are important. And part of what's critical, I think, growing up for children is to have respect and to have limits placed on them, but to have some instruction on behavior. What are good manners? How do you treat people with respect? How do you listen to people? So I think it's really important, and that needs to be put into the technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think that of course, totally agree with Ken. I think that even the way that some of the conversation has taken place in the political sphere, we got it, it was marketed wrong. Like when people would talk about political correctness, what they should really have been saying is be sensitive to how you speak about other people. Be sensitive about how you talk about people, particularly if you're characterizing a whole gender, race, ethnic group, religion, whatever it is. Just be thoughtful. There are a lot of people in that group, and there's a sense in which I sometimes wonder when people are like, "Oh, goddamn, this horrible political." What are you dying to say? What is it that is so important that and have you really been thoughtful and civil about that? I think that if we just think a little bit more about the way that Ken is framing is, we all have to live together. We all want to, and yeah, I mean, look, I think it should be in the technology. I think it should do exactly what you said. And I think that Matt was describing an interaction in which the person softened after a while when realizing that the AI was essentially human-like, and in a sense started to give it the respect that it would give a human. Maybe what we need is the Alexa to talk a little bit more. But it gets to this point about what probably my central kind of psychological concern in terms of what all this stuff is going to do to us is that whole, the human AI interaction, because we're really at the very beginning of it, I've started to use it. I don't use AI that much because I frankly don't find that it writes that well, but particularly in modesty aside, like at the level I have to try to do it. But I've started to use it for translation. And, the ChatGPT has this amazing feature where you can say to it, I want to talk to this guy in Konkani, a little dialect in India, and it can do it back and forth. And you do find that while you're talking to it, you start becoming more polite. Yeah. You start saying, "Did you get that? Did I explain it clearly?" And maybe with some coding added in, you actually can get, because the AI will unfailingly remind you to be polite in a way that human beings won't. But how do we get that? It gets to the point I think Ken is making here. We have to be conscious about the path we're going down. This is the single biggest, this really is the mother of all inventions. And if we just go down it willy-nilly in some kind of let's get there first, it'll be very hard to change all this stuff 10 years from now. All right, thank you guys so much. This is such a pleasure. Great to be with you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Price. I'm one of the founders of Crescendo, and I'm here with my colleague, Anand Chandrasekaran, who is another founder of Crescendo. I'd like to take credit for the idea and the foundation of the business, but he did it. So actually, maybe just talk us a little bit about how the idea got sparked and where you took it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your leadership. It's been kind of amazing building the business together for the last year or so. It really feels like one of those overnight successes that took a long time to build. I go back to 2016. I was at Facebook running the Messenger platform, and we would track about 200 chatbot companies, and it would add every day. We would add a few more every week. And then as the years went by, I joined a cloud contact center company called Five9, and we saw how long it took for all of these companies to work together and get something up and running and really deliver a real CX outcome. And one of the things I would hear so often is the more people invested in CX, somehow the shittier the CX got, which is I'm like, that's really hard to believe. How is that even possible, right? But the thing that really stuck with me as something I had to do something about personally was just how long it took for people after everybody wanted the right outcome. And so at GC, we have the ability to go create a company that we wished existed, but doesn't exist in the real world. And so we're able to go pull the pieces together. And from my perspective, I think now a year in and a lot of capital and, customers later, it really feels like in addition to delivering that outcome for customers, where the more you invest, the better your CX actually gets, which is really the problem we were looking to solve. And it really doesn't hurt that we get to be on the right side of history, which is we actually do offer great CX for end customers who at the end of the day are making these calls or on these chats. And so it really feels great to have kind of gone after this 20-year industry problem.
I think we all see the opportunity for AI and the skill at which AI can actually take on answers. I mean, those of us who have worked with the ChatGPT or played with it, I mean, it's remarkable, the breakthrough, and probably the biggest thing that has happened in the customer service industry for since the telephone, in many respects. And actually it has the promise to break the gap between customers who actually want to contact us at any time, through any channel, in any language that they want. And as businesses, to survive, we've been putting up these barriers. Many call it deflection. Try and push customers away because we know it's going to bankrupt us or break the bank if we took every call at every time from any customer. And so the promise is there. I think what we find was that businesses, and we rightly so, should be scared about setting AI loose and representing our brands within businesses, especially this. And the test we see is that about 85% of GPT-based customer service agents, they're about 85% accurate out of the box, based upon a company's knowledge. Human agents are about 90%, so they're a bit better at this stage. What's interesting, though, that we discovered is actually if you can take the AI and set people at two levels. Firstly, really, really have people watch the quality and train it and constantly iterate it and work on the knowledge and contain that knowledge purely to what it's meant to be talking about and keeping an eye on it in quality assurance. You can get 85% to 95%. So then if you can get the humans working with the AI, you can get 90% to nearly 100%. And what we figured out is this combination, we call it augmented AI, of putting the humans and the AI together and integrating and rewiring it from the bottom up, is that you can get remarkable quality results. And what happens then is that companies get excited about deploying it, customers get excited about using it, and we start to get the flywheel going on breaking this barrier of discontinuity, which is, I mean, we're seeing it firsthand and it's incredibly exciting. One of the things that you first thought about is, okay, how can we change this dynamic where there is this economic misincentive? So why don't we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things that we've sort of almost like accidentally pioneered, but now we realize like how important that is to the value proposition is what we call outcome-based billing, right? This has now become a big thing in the industry where if like this model wins out, which I have absolutely no doubt, it becomes the model, it's almost as impactful as the change from on-prem software to SaaS, and then from SaaS to kind of outcome-based, where you're not paying for software, you're not paying for consulting services, you're not paying for any kind of risk that you're taking. You're at the end of the day saying, like, I'll agree on an outcome. Anytime you deliver this outcome, I'll pay you for that. And it cuts to this misalignment that we talked about, which has existed for like 20 to 25 years. If it's misaligned if it's not misaligned on the most highest level, then it's misaligned on the next level and the next level.
One of the things I'm really interested in seeing is how the dynamic of the social dynamic is playing out. So we have a customer that called Web Connects that does events. And they provide the ticketing, but also provide the customer service for the events, and they use Crescendo in order to do that. So we're partners. And the Albuquerque Balloon Festival is a big one of their events. And so we launched the Voice AI for the Albuquerque Balloon Festival, and it's very interesting to hear the dynamics. So whenever a customer goes live, we watch very carefully the interaction between the customer and the AI. We want to make sure it's tuned for the right personality. We want to make sure it's accurate as well, but also importantly, we also want to make sure it's not doing anything wrong, and it's also handing off to the people at the right time and make sure that the handoff is there. And it's really interesting to hear it. So if somebody comes on and the AI says, I'm the... hello, welcome to Albuquerque Balloon Festival. How can I help you? And they say, tickets, because they think they're talking to an IVR. And then the AI is trained, so it says, I understand you want to know tickets. I can tell you anything you want about tickets. And they have this pause. And they say, please, can you tell me how I can get tickets? And the AI comes back and it says, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. What's your part of the event you want to do? And then she said, well, I'm actually interested in the Glow event. And what you can see is that initially at the beginning of the discussion, the social dynamic of the interaction, well, that person, she stayed on the line for 25 minutes because she felt comfortable in asking every question she ever wanted to know about the Albuquerque Balloon Festival. So what we're seeing is this move now, and this dynamic where you can move from deflection to interaction with customers and retain them. And there's so many cases like this, and breaking so many of your preconceptions on dynamics. Over 70s love chatting to AI. Because it's at their own pace and it's dynamic and it's social to them. They don't think that they're taking up people's time. And as long as they can get somebody in the end to actually move across. So these things are incredibly interesting and rewarding, and makes me realize how privileged we are to be at this juncture and seeing the evolution of this technology and how it moves for good. So Band-Aid's a really good place to start. If you're a customer service leader and you see that you have a capacity issue or there are dropped calls or there's some service or there's a spike coming, then we can help with that very quickly and we can help address that. At the other side of things, there's this vision approach, and customer service leaders should be more thinking about service design and service innovation rather than assembling nuts and bolts and bits and bobs and things together. So a customer of ours, Kyle, he's the CRO of Owner.com, who are like the Shopify for restaurants. And he called up and said, yeah, I've got this really big vision. I want my customers, because they're restaurateurs, to be able to talk to me in any language at any time of day and night, and they want to do a live call. They don't have time, they've got their phone here and they're trying to, deal with the stuff in the restaurant, but they haven't been able to actually do that. So, and by the way, I've got this outsourcer who's doing a bad job. So what we did was say, okay, let's take care of that. Pay us what you're paying the outsourcer and we'll deploy the AI at the moment and we'll improve the service. Now we're at a stage where he can start to add new channels. So he's adding text and SMS and voice channels, etc. And he has this vision of moving from where his company was actually constrained and worried about opening up service because it wasn't that good, to now having great service and wants to expand it everywhere but not breaking the economic barrier. So we think of two things: Band-Aid, vision. Let's try and get them together.
Curious about examples of the outcomes and also your pricing model connected to them. So what's considered an expensive outcome versus inexpensive? And then if you could give us a flavor of some of the CX lingos that we can hang, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so the way we think about pricing as an outcome is at two levels. Firstly, what's the problem solved for the customer? And that will be a metric as to how it gets solved, and it'll be slightly custom for each customer. So it's for customers just have a high volume of small questions, then it might be one level, or customers have a lot of complex. But we will only charge one price as to whether it was the AI plus a human, or the human. So it's incredibly predictable, from that model. The other thing that we have is a piece of technology that analyzes every conversation and scores it according to how well we answered the question on empathy, accuracy, whether it followed policy on the AI and not. And actually, we incentivize all of our people on making sure that they're focused on that. So they're actually on the back of the AI if it's not doing that. And so what we do is that if it's not up to standard in QA, then we'll credit the customer back on that. So,
yeah. I think the two I would say probably most ripe for being irrelevant are average handle time and first call resolution.
Yeah.
I think like both of those and many more like those are things of the past in an era of AI, because the AI will be very friendly, will talk to you as long as you like. Mm-hmm. If you are jumping in a car, like move to call, and then if you're back home, move to chat. Wouldn't ask you for account number every time talk to you. So I think a lot of those acronyms were meant to obfuscate and kind of pretend that there's an alignment. versus in this case, the outcome is whatever we both agreed is the outcome, particularly whatever the customer picked is the outcome. And there's almost like no other surrogate metric that we're tracking, which actually ironically clears the ground for talking about the business, right? So the metrics that we talk about with customers are the actual metrics that matter. Like, if you're seeing a decrease in sentiment, you probably should take a look at churn the following week, which is the actual metric that the business cares about, not a pretend metric that only the BPO cares about.
Thank you so much for being so open about your business. And it's really promising to see the progress you're making in such a short time. My question is, in your tech stack, you've already mentioned that you rely quite a bit on OpenAI, and sounds like you have a services agnostic approach to these different services. Can you speak about some of the other services that you use, that you rely on, or you build on top of?
Yeah, there's some fantastic things out there. So voice transcription, voice synthesis, voice recognition. And because the approach we take is that we believe the whole is greater than the sum of parts. And what we can do is move very quickly and move very quickly to see where the innovations are going on each of these different aspects. And that just provides a platform. And then the AI, the IP we put on top of that is things like failover. But there's also other aspects of it as well that are not built into the core technologies. And I often think about this as kind of maybe operating system and application, at least the operating system. When we first launched our chatbot, it was for a router company. And the chatbot would give you instructions on how to reboot your router, if the Brits in here. And then we thought, with a voice bot, all you have to do is, it just has to read the stuff that the chatbot was saying. So people call up and say, okay, to reset your router, and you give them 5 instructions out of it. The amazing thing about the AI is that what you can then train the model and say, if somebody comes in, you are a voice bot. If somebody comes in, ask them if you want to talk them through the sequence. Ask them if you want them to wait for a prompt back before they conduct the sequence. So now the AI goes in and says, would you like me to talk you through it, or would you like me to text instructions? If they say to instructions, say, can you move to your router now? And it walks it through. And the speed of innovation there is amazing. But what's amazing is that we don't have to worry about settings around interruption levels or any of the dynamics. Our partners and our foundations take care of that. Again, and we shouldn't forget here that the most important component of our offering are the people, the humans. And they're integrated to every step of the way, from escalations to quality assurance and stuff. And that's what differentiates it.
You touched a little bit, sort of retaining information about a particular account. But how do you think about privacy? Because there's sort of a level of appreciation of efficiency that I don't have to repeat my account number. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, at some point, it also becomes intrusive and also scary that all your personal information is being retained and digitized somehow. Yeah. How do you think about that?
The first thing is we don't retain any information, any personal information. So anything that comes into our system flows through, gets used to answer the question, and then gets discarded. In certain cases, it makes sense to anonymize the dynamic of the information and obfuscate any personal information. That can help us to improve the service of it all.
So blinding it somehow.
Yes, making sure that there's no association about that. And that's useful because you can start to do some interesting things like, correlating, dynamics on demographics or style or what really gives better customer service. But no, it's super important to develop the trust.
We've got time for one more question.
Perfect.
Hi, question on the pricing model a bit again. What are your advice or guidance? Like, how do we get predictability into price, into revenue if it's based on outcome based?
We talk a lot about customers like this. Our goal is out of the gate to bring down the cost per interaction than what you have at the moment. And what we do is also build in extra capacity buffers into that as well. So most of our customers, it would take a remarkable spike in that in order to not realize the cost savings on it. Now, what does start to happen though and we see is that once people get comfortable with it, customers say, we want more interactions. But then that becomes a deliberate thing. So that's saying, okay, I'm going to open up phone channel, and I'm going to open up other aspects. But what we tend to see is once it gets deployed, the CEO will say, this stuff's amazing, we should put it everywhere. And then there's a discussion, say, well, this increase in customer satisfaction is actually leading to an increase in sales and an increase in retention. There might be a consummate further investment in order to do that. But out the gate, it's almost always a cost reduction by moving to Crescendo platform.
Hi, and thanks for having us. Can you describe a little bit the process of a customer getting up and running with you in the beginning and how long that takes, and how you expect that to evolve over time?
We will take the knowledge documentation that exists at the moment that you use to train. We will train the AI and train our humans at the same time. If we already have a relationship, we'll use what's already there. It usually takes a week or so in order to actually get it set up. We then have a very strict quality assurance approach, and because we have the people, they become fake customers, and they can test the service as well. And so before it moves into production, we make sure it's incredibly high quality. And the trick here is to narrow down the scope by which the bot answers questions. Don't risk it. Don't trust it. So in many cases, you'll say, don't talk about pricing, or don't talk about it, because we can never be guaranteed on the accuracy of the information that's actually in place. So typically, you'll go live, you'll switch some volume over to it. And then what we do is that we have an always-on quality check when it's live with the humans in the loop, checking, ensuring the AI is there. So it's like usually a 1 to 2 week bedding in process we're all on. And then we move it to, typically then we move it to new channels and move it on as well. So.
Thank you.